Hi there, everyone. Scott and Lars back with another review and analysis for the Apothecary Diaries, this time for episode 30, brought to you by Camille's Harem. Not just a podcast for novice writers by novice writers, but also a YouTube channel by novice writers for novice writers. Because writing is an adventure, it's more fun with friends, especially when you gotta go and save the sick servant girl from being killed in a shed.
I mean, kind of. It's more complicated than that, but yes, let's go with that.
This is just the beginning. We are about to peel away the curtains. But before we really dive into the events of this episode and our analysis of those events and of its writing, real quick, we are still looking for people to discover all of the frogs hidden within each one of these videos. When you are able to find all said frogs, make sure that you comment below. The first person to comment with the correct number of frogs will win their own frog from Camille. Woohoo!
Yep, you got to keep looking for them.
Yeah, say do not let the excitement for these frogs die down, because they are indeed quite fun and exquisite.
I love it. All right, well, let's get moving. We had a really good episode this time. There was a lot of there's been a lot that's been being set up bit by bit, like this entire season, and now we're getting a bit of a reveal, a bit of a shoe drop for all the stuff that's been happening.
Yeah, we got some pretty intense confirmation in this episode. I didn't think we were going to get it this soon.
Well, it doesn't surprise me too much, just because knowing what they're going to get into next, it's kind of goes a little bit of a different direction from all the stuff that was going down in this episode. So kind of dropping all of this on us now will kind of give us a bit of, what's it called?
Bit of a reprieve?
Bit of a reprieve, but a bit of like narrative satisfaction. We know that they're still looking into this, but we're getting some of our answers at the moment before they make a segue into something else. So I feel like it was important to have the reveal of this episode for this specific stuff.
So in this episode, we pick up right where the last one left off, which I'm really enjoying how the flow from episode to episode goes that way. It's not like, by the way, 2-3 weeks later. No, we pick up with the request being carried to Lady Gyokuyo from the middle-aged servant in the apartment complex area where women can go to if they need some rest, if they need care. About there's this servant girl from the Crystal Pavilion who was showing a really bad cough that needed to be checked. But before we could do anything for her, we had to make sure that she could request time off to be personally seen after. And she vanished. She disappeared. It's been 2 weeks. And if that cough is not treated, it could become deadly. And when Maomao hears that this is the message, she's like, okay, I'm on it. And because of her time in the Crystal Pavilion in season 1, taking care of Lady Lihua, she knows how this pavilion works, its inner dynamics and scheming and politics and popularity and all that good jazz. And she devises a pretty interesting plan to discover this girl, figure out where she is and what's going on with her. Rather than just plowing on through the front doors like she did before, she goes for subterfuge. She disguises herself, enters into the pavilion with the Quack Doctor, who makes a show of apologizing for what has happened in the past, from the fact that he wasn't able to save Lady Lihua's son. And we get a pretty intense emotional moment. And as Lady Shin, who is not the head of the household, but is rather kind of the chief butler, if you will, of Lady Lihua's household, brings them onto the grounds, and as they're going along, Maomao is whispering stuff to the doctor, trying to get him to prolong the conversation, lengthen out the walk so she can keep an eye on everything. And she realizes the work shed, has something interesting going on with it. Those flowers, that's a very interesting choice of flowers. And by manipulating the conversation, is able to confirm that that is where the servant girl has been shut in for about 2 weeks now. And Lady Shin's like, well, of course we had to isolate her because she's sick. We don't want to have anyone else get sick. But she has been left completely alone for the smell of death or the smell of illness to cover up the smell of incense. Very specifically, the kind of smells with the perfumes and potions and incenses that have been deemed too dangerous for the women because, if combined in large quantities, will kill unborn children. So Mao's like, this is where she is, this is where she's being kept, and this is why she's being kept here. Lady Shin, what have you been up to? So, of course, Jinchi is summoned along with Gao Shin, who are there to conduct then an investigation of what exactly is happening. And Lady Shin, though she's on the back foot, she's pretty articulate, she's very imposing, very proud, and she's able to explain her way through a lot of these happenstances. It's not my fault. Look, we've got to take it. Look, we needed to isolate her. I don't know about these potions and perfumes. I don't fully understand why this is such a big deal. But Maomao, being the amazing detective that she is, she reads into this and realizes this is all part of a greater plot. Lady Shin is just one finger of the fist meant to pummel the emperor's family, and that she's being manipulated because she wants to take Lady Lihau's place as the favored consort within the pavilion. And there's been that jealousy, that rivalry that's been unspoken now for so long. It's finally bubbled to the surface in the worst way possible, and results in Lady Shin turning on her cousin, trying to splash her with these perfumes that, again, taken in too large quantities, could cause a miscarriage. We have firm confirmation now that she's pregnant again. So this is really dangerous what she's just done. Jinji, Maomao, and Gao Shin step in to prevent disaster from happening. Maomao calls her out, saying, you just want to become the empress, while Lady Lihau, she actually cares for the emperor. Lady Lihau asks, what's... I completely mispronounced her name again. Whatever. I do this all the time. Lady Lihua steps in, however, and does something rather remarkable. She strikes her cousin, and does it to prevent her cousin from getting beheaded. Because rather than allowing Jinji and Gao Shin to take the next step in administering punishment, she does, and uses her position as the head of the household to dismiss her cousin, thereby sparing her from the executioner's axe, but also condemning her to a life of dishonor because of the things that she has done. And that is kind of where we leave off, with Maomao being really happy that she's managed to help save the day again. We have a reveal now that there's definitely someone pulling the strings within the court who knows what's happening in the rear palace and is manipulating the women there to commit atrocities in order to hurt the emperor. The emperor has found out about this, and we're left off with a kind of emotional cliffhanger of what's going to happen next, because the emperor should be pleased that one of his consorts and his unborn child has been saved from this diabolical plot, and yet he looks very grim. And who knows why, but we've learned enough by now to know that if you earn the attention of the emperor, that's not always necessarily a good thing.
Oh, there's so much to break down this episode because, like I was saying before, we've been building up bit by bit for all of this different stuff. And finally getting this opportunity to have a reason why all of these different, like, oils and chemicals and plants and all that kind of stuff, why they're being suddenly found within the confines of the rear palace. Yeah, it makes sense that they're all there to make some of these really dangerous drugs. I mean, and just by themselves, and that's why it's so subtle. We were talking about this before in one of the previous episode. All of these things are so subtle because just by themselves they're harmless. There isn't a big issue that you have one of these things here, or maybe two or three of these things, but all of them together, especially in one box like we find in this episode, it points to a specific thing. And it's great we have Maomao here explaining to us as the watchers why that's important. It's that having that expertise and then showing it to us is like, yeah, this is bad because it can make abortion medication, which killing even an unborn child of the emperor in this case is really, really bad in this kind of situation, in this kind of setting.
To build on your point right there of how all of these subtle details, ingredients, components have all now finally been brought together into one place, and kind of pulls back the curtain, reveals there is indeed a diabolical plot that's been brewing under our noses this whole time. This episode really gave me a great like Sherlock versus Moriarty vibe, where Maomao is our Sherlock character, piecing everything together, picking up on all these details that people have missed. Now is like the Napoleon of crime has now been revealed, and has been revealed through the efforts of a jealous woman. This confirmation might have gone completely unnoticed by Maomao and the others had it not been for Lady Shin treating this one servant girl the way that she had. She probably could have still protected her implements, her perfumes to use on her cousin, had she not decided to take this girl and hide her away in a shed, to use the smell of disease and death to cover up the smell of perfume, which is just so horrible. It's a very Moriarty thing.
Mm-hmm. And it showcases that these are very smart women. Like all of these characters that are in this rear palace, they're very smart. They're very goal oriented. They're very focused on what they need to do to, one, survive, but two, make the most of the situation they're in. And that, like, the power that they have, that strength that they have, it shows itself in different ways. So Lady Shin, yeah, that's what she wants. She's very cunning, she's very ambitious, and she's jealous and affronted that she wasn't chosen. I mean, as the audience, from what we've seen up to this point, it's very easy to see why she wasn't chosen. It's a matter of personality, it's a matter of physical characteristics. Like, all of that put together, it makes sense why Lady Lihua was the one that was chosen as the wise consort. But we're getting a beautiful counterpoint in her cousin, Lady Lihua, who is just as smart, just as goal oriented, and has been preyed upon by her cousin for a long, long time. We saw what happened in the first season, where she was getting poisoned and almost died because of it. And it was only because of Maomao and Jinchi that she didn't pass away because of it. But now that we have an exact person to point at of why that was happening, it wasn't just like the incompetence of the servants, it was the reason the servants were incompetent. It's the reason all of this stuff is put together now, and we're finding it now because of the servant girl.
If there's one bit of criticism that I would lobby at this episode, and in a way kind of in the season thus far, is that we are not given a good explanation for why Lady Shin is now in the pavilion, in the Crystal Pavilion, because at the beginning of season 1, Jinji directs Maomao to go into the Crystal Pavilion to try to save Lady Lihua, and we get to meet a lot of her household because of the showdown that they have with Maomao over her trying to bring the correct foods to Lady Lihua, as well as trying to deal with the matter of the powder and the perfumes. So we've already gotten to know quite a bit about the Crystal Pavilion. We never met Lady Shin, and now she's here.
Mhm.
I can kind of put 2 and 2 together and say, okay, then I think that very likely Lady Shin was brought in as a response to Lady Lulan, who has brought in a huge household to rival all the other pavilions, meaning that now they have to increase their staffs and their households. Lady Gyokyo has already brought that up, and so very likely Lady Lihua is just ahead of the curve in this regard. And it would make sense. Bring in her cousin and someone that she can trust, or that she believes that she can trust, someone who knows her, someone who's very domineering,
Well,
someone who's very powerful and
let
respected.
me
So
let
that
me
makes
stop you.
sense, but we're just not
Let
given an explanation why she's there.
let me stop you there. It does explain that, actually.
Does it?
It outright explains that, because it explains that Lady Lihua and Lady Shin were sent at the same time. They both had the equal opportunity to become one of the top consorts, and it was Lady Lihua who was chosen. And because Lady Shin wasn't chosen, she ended up staying as the head of the household. And it would have been better if she would have been chosen as just like a little bit lower ranking consort, as one of the like middle consorts. She would have been in a better position that way, but she ended up staying in the household trying to support Lady Lihua, and because of that situation, that jealousy, it festered, it grew, it ended up overflowing until it became what it is now. But they were given the same equal opportunity from the beginning to do that, and it's because Lady Sheen felt like her skills, her own superiority wasn't being like seen and answered. That's part of the reason that
Okay.
jealousy festered so much. But they like I said, they both had the opportunity.
Okay, and that must then be my misunderstanding. Because like as you explained this, I'm like, okay, where's this coming from? I remember now in the flashback. Yeah, there was the confirmation they were both presented to the Emperor. I guess it was just my misunderstanding. I thought it was that they were presented as, which one do you want to have enter into the harem? And it was Lady Lihua who was chosen, and Shin wasn't. But you're right.
Mm-hmm.
They were both accepted on it, and Lady Lihua was the one who was raised to the position that she has right now as one of the 4 main consorts. So you are correct. Thank you for correcting me.
No, you're good. You're good. Lady Lihua, though, I have to say she is the MVP of this episode, because like I know you've made a bunch of videos specifically with like Apothecary Diaries as the example of how to write strong women, and Lady Lihua is a glorious example of a strong woman, especially now that we've seen her character arc pretty much come full swing from the first season. She was sick and wasn't really able to do much for herself in the first season because of being poisoned and having to deal with all of that. But now that she's better, now that she's able to get all of the information, she's able to take charge of the situation and do it in a very graceful and merciful way. I mean, she has all the power in this situation to completely decide what's going to happen. I mean, Jinchi was probably going to end up like pushing Lady Shane's execution through, because that was what he would have to do as his position demanded. He didn't really have power to like control that. The one who did have that power is Lady Lihua, who saw that chance, and she decided it's better to cast out her cousin in dishonor. Dishonor. Um, dishonor you, dishonor upon your cow. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. Which it's merciful that she does do that, but it's also a punishment at the same time, because now Lady Shin has to live with the consequences of that. And she might not feel guilty for her actions, but that dishonor, it's going to ruin her place in society outside of the harem. Specifically, she no longer has a place in the harem and would have died if she stayed. But now that she's getting cast out, she has the chance to continue living and make the most of her situation from there. So that's where the mercy is. But it's a rough life outside of the harem at the same time. So it still is a punishment. It's kind of like Avatar: The Last Airbender, where Zuko gets cast out of the Fire Nation for speaking out of turn, and he's basically sent on this wild goose chase. And instead of getting like killed in a fight with his father or like some other bigger punishment, they basically just sent him on a journey, put him away from where everybody else is doing stuff. And even though he can't go home, he's still alive. I mean, and nobody, like from the very beginning of the show, nobody's seen the Avatar for ages. Like, he's
doomed.
He's right. Yeah, exactly. It's a doomed quest. Like, he can't. They don't really expect much of him. They're just like, you've messed up. Just go. In the same case in this way, though, I think this one's more poignant just because, like, Zuko's kind of came full circle and it showcased just how bad the Fire Nation was and the Emperor and everything was. This one showcases more, this is your punishment, but I'm being merciful about it because I care about you. Yeah, that's enough about Avatar: The Last Airbender. That's not what we're talking about this episode.
Well, to piggyback off of what you're describing right here with how Lady Lihua shows such, like, honestly, such kindness in the face of something that's genuinely awful. I really appreciate this episode in terms of her character arc, because she is very much a side character in comparison to the other characters in this very colorful cast. And because Maomao is the main character and she spends most of her time in the Jade Pavilion, we don't get to see a whole lot of her. But what we have seen from the beginning of the show up until this point, like, we've seen her at kind of like the height of her pride and power when she had her son. And then when her son died, how she was angry at Lady Gyokuyo. She was snapping. Then she was giving up the will to live and was seriously depressed. We now see her as a much calmer individual. Not that she's been cowed, but rather she has, I think, learned she's learned the virtue of not immediately jumping into a rage. She is more patient. She considers the scenario and the people who are in it. And she's learned, I think, far greater care and love. And that could either be because of the care and love that was shown to her by Maomao, or the loss of her own son, a combination of the two, amongst other things. But we see now a woman who is definitely deserving her moniker of the wise consort, that she can be merciful and just at the same time. She's being altruistic, but not naive. And she can be forceful, but calm at the same time. And it's very different from the first presentation that we were given of her within the series. Like, seeing her now, she embodies what one would hope an empress would be, in terms of her consideration, her kindness, her love, her forethought. Does that mean she will be the empress? Who knows? but she now displays all those qualities. Whereas, again, as you've brought up, the counterpoint to that is Lady Shin. And it's so beautifully. These characters just play off each other so beautifully within this episode.
Mm-hmm. They're definitely the main characters of this specific episode, and I'm fine with that. Because we don't go into a mystery to watch just the main characters, like shenanigans and everything. I mean, you may enjoy watching like NCIS or something to watch like all of the characters like riffing off of each other. But what really makes the episode is the villain, the whodunit, the mystery, like who ended up getting killed and why they were killed. That's why we're watching it. And this is very much the same. This is just kind of spread out a bit more. There's a lot more intrigue and interesting stuff going on in the background, in the forefront, like all over the place. So it's nice to see an episode where like the main characters, they're moving the plot along, but they don't have to be the focal point of that episode all of the time.
If there's one more thing that I think would be good actually to bring out as far as like some interesting character development that we see in this episode, is how Maomao disguises herself. It is significant. It is significant that she dresses up. I love how she makes herself appear taller and how she goes in without her freckles, because her false freckles are a way of her protecting herself. And she just does it. That's just now part of her. And to go and save this other woman whom she doesn't know at all, she goes out of her way, assumes a very lovely guise, which is something that she only has done if she absolutely has to. She's usually being forced to do it. In this case, she accepts it. It's in the open. She's planned this. She's put it all together. Like this kind of cunning from Maomao, like if this were to be used more often, she would be a bane on the entire palace.
Well, Maomao, it's one of Maomao's strengths, just because she doesn't fit in the mold necessarily. She'll like sit back and do her work and like pretend to fit in the mold, but she doesn't fit in the mold that the rest of these like servant girls and consorts necessarily do. And it's not just because of like her apothecary training, it's her personality and attitude that really comes out in this. And it's that personality and attitude that like makes us love her as a character, but it also like pushes the plot along at the same time. Because if it wasn't for her inquisitive and curious nature, a lot of this wouldn't be happening. We wouldn't be finding out about a lot of this. And because she's willing to put herself in danger for this kind of stuff, that's what's moving the story along. And that's why she's the main character, because she can move the story along in this way. She can't always control like the consequences of her actions or everything that's going on. Like, for example, she pushes all this along, gets the confession from Lady Shin, and like helps solve the mystery. But now she has the attention of the Emperor, which isn't necessarily a good thing. But because she did those things, the story's still moving. And that's what you need to look for in a main character when you're writing out that character, is why is this character moving the story forward? You need to, as the writer specifically, you need to have that firmly in mind.
Yes. Not having a character who is being active rather than passive. The plot's not pushing the character forward. The character is helping to move the plot forward. The plot would move ahead without Maomao, which, at least as far as we're being shown, the plot is to destroy the Emperor's family. But Maomao can affect that story because of her autonomy, because of her skill set, because of the relationships that she develops. And not just because she's a Mary Sue that bends everything to her will, where everything magically works out. And
I'm glad she's not a Mary Sue. I'm so glad
Yes.
she's not a Mary Sue. I love how she is a very strong character, and like in her sense, like her strength, her power is like her knowledge and her personality put together makes it so she can accomplish things other characters can't. But how you move the story forward with that is how you use that power. It's the goals that you're moving towards, it's how you're using it. And so in this episode, she's using skills she's learned at like the brothels she grew up in to dress herself up, to disguise herself. She knows exactly what the flowers mean, where to look for the sick servant girl, um, and what all of these different like perfumes mean. That's just stuff she knows. But what she does with that leads to the major confession they needed to find out why is all of this stuff getting, at least partially why is all of this stuff getting into the Rare Palace where it shouldn't be.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a strong character right there. Just kind of a more minor point, and it's one you brought up earlier. We need to talk about the Quack Doctor a little bit because he actually impressed me this episode.
Yeah, he impressed me as well. Being willing to go along with this particular plot and ploy of Maomao's, she needs him to give her, who she's supposed to be a stranger to the Crystal Pavilion while she's in disguise, to give her credibility. She needs to have the Doctor there, and she can rely on the Quack Doctor because he's meant to be a neutral party in it all. If she came with Jinshi, that comes with the seal and authority of the Emperor, and everyone's going to act a certain way. And he will be crowded because it's Jinji, and all the girls are tripping over themselves for that beautiful man. If she comes with Lady Gyokuyo, that would be a rival coming into the other palace, and the women there will treat her very they'll be very standoffish, and she doesn't have a good connection to Lady Lihau or to Lady Lulan to utilize their resources and their presence, and probably would have resulted in the same. The Quack Doctor is meant to be a neutral party. However, because it was on his watch that Lady Lihua's son passed away, there is animosity there. Lady Shin brings that up and it's like a dagger into his gut and twisting it. Mm-hmm. And we know for a fact that he does not like to get involved in these kinds of situations. He's a very timid person, and he still shows up because it's the right thing to do. And as a doctor, just like as Maomao is, he is going to try to protect other people to the best of his ability. He would have saved the children if he had known about the poisons beforehand. He just didn't. This is in a small way him making up for past mistakes and showing a little bit more spine. I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, no, it is really cool.
So yeah, good character development for a lot of people in this episode.
This was a very, very needed, very satisfying conclusion to part of the mysteries we've been seeing, because you can't have a long form story and have it be focused on mystery as much as this does without giving a bit of like payout, a bit of satisfaction in seeing some of those mysteries, some of those like clues that we've been gathering being put together finally. And which is really important because from what I know, moving on, we're going to go on a bit of a tangent from this kind of stuff. So it's good getting that payout now, but knowing that there's still more to be found in this situation.
Oh, I'm so excited. So excited for the next episode. All right.
I am too. So, this will be fun.
So, with all that being said, we hope that you guys have enjoyed our review, our breakdown, our analysis and conversation about this episode, and that you've taken away something good from it. This is an excellent example of excellent payoff to all the setup that we've gotten. Now, if you are looking forward to more reviews and analyses of the Apothecary Diaries, then please make sure that you subscribed and click the bell notification so that way you're told for when those videos come on out. Please remember that we are still handing out beautifully drawn frogs from Camille to those who find the correct number of frogs in each of our videos. So please comment down below with the correct number of frogs. So that way you can win your own. And if you'd like to further support the work that we do here, please check out the books that we've published. Links for them are in the description below. Otherwise, thank you so much for joining us on this incredible adventure that we call writing. And until the next video, y'all, tschüss.
Ogini.